Have you ever wondered what's actually happening inside your head when you ask ChatGPT to write something for you? It feels like magic, right? You type a prompt, and a perfectly structured paragraph appears. But what is the cognitive cost of that magic? A groundbreaking new study from the MIT Media Lab, published in June 2025, decided to find out. Researchers set up an experiment to literally peer into the brains of people as they worked. They wanted to answer a simple but profound question: does relying on powerful AI like ChatGPT change the way our brains work for the worse? To investigate this, the team gathered a group of participants and gave them a straightforward task: write a series of essays, the kind you might see on the SAT. But here's the twist. The participants were split into 3 groups. One group had to write using only their own minds, no outside help. The second group could use a search engine like Google to look up information and ideas. The third group, however, was given access to ChatGPT and encouraged to use it to generate their essays. All the while, the researchers were monitoring their brain activity using EEG scans, which measure the electrical signals firing between neurons. The results were, to put it mildly, shocking. The brain scans revealed a dramatic difference between the groups. The participants using only their brains showed high levels of neural engagement, with different parts of their minds lighting up as they wrestled with ideas, searched their memories, and structured their sentences. The search engine group also showed significant brain activity, though slightly less. But the ChatGPT group? Their brain activity was noticeably lower across the board. The very act of thinking, of creating, of connecting ideas was being outsourced, and their brains reflected that lack of mental heavy lifting. It was as if their minds had been put on standby. This wasn't just a momentary dip in brain power. The study found that the specific brainwaves associated with deep cognitive processes were significantly reduced in the AI group. We're talking about the alpha, theta, and delta bands, the very frequencies linked to creativity, learning, memory recall, and understanding complex information. It suggests that when we hand over the core task of thinking to an AI, our brains don't just get a little break. They seem to disengage from the fundamental processes that build knowledge and foster intellectual growth. The study provided the first direct neurological evidence for something many of us have worried about: that convenience might come at a steep cognitive price. One of the most startling findings from the MIT study revolved around memory. You would think that if you just finished writing an essay, you would remember what it was about. But for the heavy ChatGPT users, that wasn't always the case. When the researchers asked participants to recall or rewrite the essays they had just produced, a disturbing pattern emerged. The brain-only group could remember their work clearly. The ChatGPT group, however, struggled. Their ability to recall the content they had just submitted was significantly weaker, and their brain scans showed very little activity in the regions associated with memory consolidation. It was as if the words had passed through them without leaving a trace. This phenomenon has a name: cognitive offloading. It's a term that describes our tendency to delegate mental tasks to external tools, whether it's a calculator, a GPS, or now, an AI. Think of your brain like a muscle. When you consistently exercise it by solving problems, remembering facts, and creating new things, it grows stronger and more efficient. But what happens when you stop using those muscles? They weaken and atrophy. The MIT study suggests that by offloading the core work of thinking and writing to ChatGPT, we are essentially preventing our cognitive muscles from getting the workout they need to stay strong, flexible, and resilient. The problem is that this cognitive laziness might have lasting effects. The study observed that when frequent AI users were later asked to complete a task without any help, their brains remained less active. Their neural connectivity didn't just bounce back to full power. It was as if their brains had gotten used to the path of least resistance and struggled to fire up again when required. This points to a worrying possibility: that over-reliance on AI doesn't just make us less engaged in the moment, but it could potentially degrade our baseline cognitive abilities over time, making it harder to think critically even when we want to. This effect was also reflected in the quality of the work produced. On the surface, the essays written with ChatGPT were often grammatically correct and well-structured. They looked good. But when evaluators read them, they described the writing as empty, robotic, and lacking insight. The essays from the AI group were also strikingly similar to one another, revealing a lack of original thought. The human touch, the unique perspective, the creative leap, the personal voice was missing. The participants themselves even reported feeling a lower sense of ownership over their work, acknowledging that the final product wasn't truly theirs. In our fast-paced world, efficiency is king. One of the biggest selling points of tools like ChatGPT is that they can make us incredibly productive. The MIT study confirmed this without a doubt. Participants using ChatGPT finished their writing tasks up to 60% faster than those who relied only on their own brains. From a purely output-driven perspective, the AI users were the clear winners. They produced more words in less time, hitting their targets with what seemed like superhuman speed. If your only goal is to get the assignment done and submitted, AI appears to be the perfect solution for boosting your productivity. But this is where the productivity paradox comes into play. While the speed and volume of work went up, something crucial went down: learning. The researchers measured what's known as germane cognitive load, which is the mental effort your brain uses to actually process new information and embed it into your long-term memory. This is the good kind of mental strain, the kind that leads to real understanding. In the ChatGPT group, this essential cognitive load decreased by a staggering 32%. They were writing faster, yes, but they were learning and retaining substantially less. They were going through the motions of the task without engaging in the deep thinking that makes it meaningful. This creates a dangerous illusion. A student might use AI to complete a history essay in an hour instead of 5, and feel incredibly productive. They get a good grade, save a lot of time, and move on. But have they learned about the historical event? Have they grappled with the complexities of the topic? The study suggests the answer is likely no. The process of struggling with information, organizing it in your own words, and making connections is precisely how learning happens. By skipping that struggle, we may also be skipping the learning that comes with it, exchanging deep comprehension for shallow, fleeting efficiency. Think about building a piece of furniture. You could buy a pre-assembled cabinet, and you'd have a cabinet in minutes. Or you could buy a flat pack kit, struggle with the confusing instructions, and spend hours putting it together yourself. In the end, both methods give you a cabinet. The only thing teaches you how to assemble it together, how to use the tools, and how to solve problems when things don't go as planned. Relying on AI for writing is like always buying the pre-assembled furniture. It gets the job done quickly, but you never learn how to build anything yourself, leaving you dependent on the tool for every future task. So, is the answer to abandon these powerful new tools and go back to pencils and paper? Not at all. The MIT study didn't just highlight the dangers of AI, it also pointed toward a better, more effective way to use it. The key, it turns out, is not if you use AI, but how and when you use it. The research revealed that the most successful outcomes, both in terms of productivity and cognitive engagement, came from a hybrid approach. The most effective users were those who started the writing process on their own, using their own brains to brainstorm, outline, and draft their initial ideas. Once they had done the initial heavy lifting, they then turned to AI as a partner. They used it to refine their sentences, check for grammatical errors, or suggest alternative ways to phrase a difficult point. In this scenario, the AI wasn't replacing the core act of thinking, it was augmenting it. By starting the task themselves, these participants had already engaged their brains, activated their memory, and formed their own opinions. The AI simply became a sophisticated tool for polishing their work, much like a calculator helps an accountant who already understands the principles of mathematics. This strategic use kept their brains switched on. This suggests that we should view AI not as a shortcut to avoid work, but as a collaborator that can help us do better work. The danger lies in letting the AI take the driver's seat from the very beginning. When we use it to generate the initial draft, we are offloading the most important part of the creative process. But if we use it as a sounding board, a thesaurus, or an editor after we've already laid the foundation, We can get the benefits of its power without sacrificing our own cognitive growth. It's about maintaining our role as the architect of our own thoughts. Ultimately, the responsibility is ours. As AI becomes more integrated into our daily lives, we have to make conscious choices about how we interact with it. We can choose to be passive users, letting it do our thinking for us and risking the cognitive consequences. Or we can choose to be active, strategic users who leverage these tools to enhance our own intelligence. The goal should not be to work less, but to think better, by using AI to support, rather than supplant, our own mental efforts. We can ensure that this incredible technology makes us smarter, more capable, and more creative, not less.